And just a couple more pieces, and I appreciate everyone, taking the time to have a conversation. I want to piggyback off of that, and that is, right now you've got mixed martial arts, you've got UFC, you've got a lot of guys that are playing, professional football. Do you think that because you have a number of these individuals going into other sports, that is potentially hurt or limited the talent pool for professional wrestlers, in your opinion? Your thoughts on that? We'll start with Demetrius, and I'll go Steve, and then Tom.
I just give a lot of respect to anybody who because everything you just mentioned, from mixed martial arts, pro wrestling, football, those are like collision sports. They're not contact sports. They're collision sports, and you can go from one to the other. Anybody willing to do that, that's got to be kind of nuts. But it's also really admirable that you would want to do that. I don't know that how it affects the talent pool for professional wrestling, especially now. WWE has their own farm system, if you will, of grooming future talent. And the indie, even though the whole world's kind of got the pause button pressed, the indie system will always keep lifeblood into professional wrestling. You're always going to have guys and gals who come up that way, and people who get so influenced by it when they're younger that they pursue it as they get a little bit older. I don't think that's going anywhere. So I think the future of professional wrestling, once the world gets spinning again, I think it's pretty bright.
Okay. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I think you see both. You'd asked about mixed martial arts and UFC and things like that. I think you see a lot of crossover, right? Tom Lawler, Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar did one, did the other, went back and forth. Bobby Lashley, who Demetrius just mentioned, did one and the other and back and forth. Dave Bautista went back and forth. There have been talks of guys like Chael Sonnen or Tito Ortiz coming into wrestling. So I really think there are people who would have gone right into wrestling in the 90s who might have gone into mixed martial arts now. But if they love wrestling, then I think they're going to end up doing wrestling at some point. Look at Gronkowski. Gronk just did WrestleMania because he's always wanted to do, wrestling. I think it might be Enes Kanter. There's an NBA guy who said he wants to do wrestling after he retires, right? So there's, I think there are athletes that love wrestling, and wrestling will become more of a second career, at least at the WWE giant draw level, for a lot of retiring athletes from other sports.
Gotcha. Great response. Tom, how about you?
I don't think it's really anything new. People moving from one, so-called mainstream sport into wrestling, like football, for example, has almost been somewhat of a feeder system into pro wrestling for a very long time. You go back and look at Ernie Ladd, played for the Dallas Cowboys, Cowboy Bill Watts, who was a wrestler and a promoter, huge football star at University of Oklahoma. Guys like Vader played for the LA Rams. Jinji Anvil Neidhart played for the Raiders. Are you going to go tell any of these guys they don't belong in wrestling? So it doesn't, it's not a real big surprise to me. But then, people who roll their eyes at that stuff now, probably don't know that specific history. Yeah. But, as far as the MMA crossover, I gotta agree with something Steve said. It's like, as far as, wanting to get into wrestling in the 90s, but then, now MMA is more of a thing than it was back then. So maybe that fits their skill set better. But you still see a lot of crossover, all the names that Steve mentioned, plus like Shayna Baszler and Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke in WWE. And even somebody like Sonya Deville in WWE who has an MMA background. So, you are seeing a lot of other athletes from other avenues coming into pro wrestling.
Yep, true. And again, it was just a question because, right now there's so many options now and so much available to people. Do you specialize, or can people specialize, or are they able to kind of maneuver back and forth between? So, all great responses.